What Russian equipment imported by the PLA is still in use today, looking back to the early 1990s, when the first batch of Su-27 fighter jets arrived in China. Probably no one could have imagined that these Steel Eagles would so profoundly reshape the course of China's national defense modernization. 30 years passed in the blink of an eye. Today, domestically built aircraft carriers cut through the waves, the J-20 pierces the sky, and the Type 055 destroyer carries the main burden. So among those Russian-style weapons that once supported the backbone of the PLA, which old partners are still shining in the forces today, and unlikely to retire anytime soon? Today, let's take a look. When it comes to the long-lasting champions of Russian-made equipment in the PLA, the Mi-17 series helicopters of the Army Aviation Corps definitely rank first. From the basic transport Mi-171 to the plateau-optimized Mi-17 V5 and V7 to various command, search and rescue, and electronic warfare variants, this machine has many versions and large numbers. It is tough, durable, highly reliable, and most importantly, the cost of operation and maintenance is very low. The troops love using it. Interestingly, China once wanted to introduce the production line and manufacture it domestically, but after doing the calculations, they were stunned. The cost of domestic production would actually be higher than importing them directly. Why? Because their production line had been running for decades and had produced tens of thousands of units. The cost had already been spread out. China was just starting, so the cost would pile up with no advantage. So after calculating everything, buying ready-made ones was still more cost-effective. This means that for a long period in the future, the Mi-17 series will remain a stable imported main force in Army aviation. That familiar silhouette will still fly in China's skies for many years. Among the Army's ground equipment, the Tor M1 field air defense system stands out. It's not large in size, but it has powerful firepower and quick reaction. It is the mobile steel shield above brigade-level units specifically designed to shoot down low-altitude aircraft and missiles. Back then, the PLA not only bought more than 20 launch vehicles, but also imported the entire battalion and company-level command system. The goal was to seamlessly integrate it into the domestic air defense network. Before China's HQ series systems fully matured, the Tor M1 filled a critical low-altitude air defense gap. Even today, it remains active in exercises. In the Navy, the Russian presence was once quite strong. The so-called 4 King Kongs, the 4 Project 956 Sovremeny-class destroyers, were the representatives. In the late 1990s, they joined the Navy carrying the powerful supersonic anti-ship missiles. With a range of 160 kilometers and supersonic penetration capability, they were considered aircraft carrier killers at the time. Times have changed. Today, compared with domestic missiles like the YJ-12 and YJ-18, with ranges of 400 to 500 kilometers and supersonic cruise capability, those earlier missiles have long faded. These old ships are still in service, but their main combat systems have gradually been upgraded with domestic equipment. They are expected to serve until after 2030 before retirement. In underwater forces, the Kilo-class submarines are heavyweight players. China first introduced 2 877 EKM basic versions, then bought 10 more advanced 636M versions in one go. At a time when the domestic Type 035 Min-class and early Type 039 Song-class submarines carried the main burden, these black holes of the ocean were the true pillars of underwater strength. Even after the domestically developed Type 093AB nuclear submarines appeared, it still took time for their performance to barely catch up. Now the Type 093C Kilin class has begun entering service, but these 12 Kilo-class submarines are still operating at the front line. Interestingly, when importing the submarines, China also purchased the 3 M54E Club anti-ship missile. The Russians were quite surprised. The export version had significantly reduced capabilities, but this actually stimulated China to fully absorb the technology. Eventually, China developed the more capable domestic YJ-18 missile with a range of around 660 kilometers, far exceeding the original version. A true case of the student surpassing the master. In addition, China also bought samples and technology of the AK-176 76mm naval gun. After upgrading the electrical system, China developed the domestic HPJ-26 naval gun. The biggest feature of this gun is toughness and reliability. Officers and sailors often say, you can fire it however you want and it won't break. It equips Type 054A frigates, Type 056 light frigates, Type 071 amphibious ships, and even Coast Guard vessels. With more than 100 units installed, it is an absolute mainstay. When it comes to reliance on Russian equipment, the Chinese Air Force undoubtedly ranks first. It's no exaggeration to say that without the Su-27s imported in the 1990s, there might not have been the later J-11 and J-16 families. Those 76 imported Su-27s, together with more than 100 J-11s produced under license, were the starting point for China's Air Force to step into the threshold of fourth-generation heavy fighters. They were the key that opened the door. They completely reversed the awkward situation of relying mainly on the J-8 and early J-7 fighters. The roughly 100 Su-30 aircraft imported later were even more significant. They opened the door for the Air Force to conduct precision ground attack missions and for the first time operationally used active radar-guided medium-range missiles. Only then did China truly master beyond visual range air combat. The contribution of these 176 Russian heavy fighters cannot be overstated. In the 2010s, China purchased 24 Su-35S fighters with even stronger performance, but by then, domestic aircraft such as the J-16 and J-10C had already matured, so the Su-35 could only be considered an added bonus. Altogether, China imported exactly about 200 Russian-made fighter jets. In addition, before domestic large transport aircraft fully matured, dozens of Il-76 large transport planes served as the backbone of strategic airlift. They frequently carried out major missions. More importantly, some Il-76 aircraft in excellent condition were converted into the KJ-2000 large airborne early warning platform. Their strategic value increased greatly. Alongside them were several Il-78 tanker aircraft, quietly extending the range of fighter jets. Finally, there is the largest Russian-made force of all. It is the air defense missile system spread across the country. Often overlooked, China imported dozens of battalions of Russian long-range air defense systems. From the early 300 PMU to the improved S-300 PMU-1 and PMU-2 and the most advanced S-400. The supporting missiles range from the 5V-55R to the 48N6 series and the S-400's 40N6 and 9M96 missiles. Before the domestic HQ series formed large-scale combat capability, and for a long time afterward, they were the absolute backbone of national and strategic air defense. They built a massive air defense network. They are expected to remain in service until 2030 or even longer. In addition, key subsystems, such as the early AL-31FN engines and some aerial refueling pods, have not yet been completely replaced. Looking back at the military camps, the golden era of Russian equipment is indeed fading. The missiles removed from the Sovremeny destroyers lie quietly in warehouses. The underwater ace, the Kilo class, is gradually giving way to the Type 093C. The once dominant Su-27 formations are now few in number. Only the powerful rotor sound of the Mi-171 still echoes above Army training grounds, becoming the clearest background sound of that special era. As domestically built carrier strike groups sail into the deep blue, as stealth fighters and Dongfeng missiles form new combat systems, these Russian-made weapons that once came to China's aid in difficult times will eventually complete their mission and fade from view. They will become legendary veteran stories told by future generations of soldiers. They once powerfully held up the sky, and in the end, they quietly merged into the increasingly brilliant dawn of China's path toward building a strong military. This Russian imprint is an indelible chapter in the modernization process of China's armed forces.